Great. Welcome, everyone, to the National Council on Electricity Policy, or NCEP, member update. My name is Sarah Fitzpatrick. I'm a technical and policy advisor, and I serve as staff lead for NCEP. Purpose for today's webinar is to provide each of our member organizations an opportunity to provide an update on the work that they're doing, what they'll be working on in the near future, resources that they have available, and any priorities of their organization that they'd like to share. Can you go to the next slide? We're recording this webinar today. We'll be posting that recording along with the slides from today's presentation on our website within the next week. If you have any questions during today's webinar, please put them in the Q&A box and we'll try and answer them with the time that we have left at the end. Any unanswered questions we'll collect and route to our speakers for follow-up. And then if you have any specific questions for your speakers, please include that in your question. You can see here on the slide that there's a link to sign up for the NCEP listserv if you haven't already done that, and feel free to share that link with anyone who you think would benefit from joining the NCEP listserv as well. We're always trying to share the work that NCEP is doing widely. Next slide, please. So this is our agenda for today's webinar. I'm going to give a brief overview of NCEP and some of the resources that we have. And then each of our member organization representatives will spend a few minutes sharing the work that their organization is doing. I'll note that unfortunately Miles Keogh couldn't join us here today, so we'll miss NACA's update, but I would encourage everyone to please look at their website or contact Miles if you have any questions or are interested in the work that NACA is doing. His contact information in the website will be listed in this slide deck. Next slide. And one more. So NCEP is a unique collaborative forum that's funded by the Department of Energy, and it brings together different state electricity decision makers on cross-cutting electricity issues. Our member groups are shown on the right-hand side of this slide. Starting from the top and going clockwise, we have the National Association of Regulatory Utility Commissioners, or NARUC, the National Governors Association, or NGA, the National Association of Clean Air Agencies, or NACA, National Conference of State Legislatures, or NCSL, National Association of State Utility Consumer Advocates, or NASUCA, and the National Association of State Energy Officials, or NASIO. So all of these state decision makers come together to talk about existing and emerging electricity-related issues and how new technologies, policies, regulations, and markets impact their states and the electricity system as a whole, and how to deal with those changes. It also provides an opportunity for members of each of these organizations to share their knowledge, perspectives, and priorities around different electricity issues. Next slide, please. So NCEP is led by an executive committee that's made up of different representatives from each of our member organizations. You can see them all listed here. Our executive committee is currently led by our Vice President, Chair Marissa Gillette of the Connecticut Public Utilities Regulatory Authority. And I'd also like to highlight that we have a new member joining us as an NCSL representative. She comes from the North Carolina General Assembly. That's Senator DeAndrea Salvador. So we're really happy to welcome her and to have her contributing to the work that NCEP does and sharing her perspective. And overall, the executive committee helps provide leadership and input on the direction that the organization goes in and the types of events that we hold throughout the year. And it also is there to make sure that the priorities and focus of each of the member organizations is being upheld in the work that NCEP is doing. Next slide. NCEP builds up an archive of resources for the benefit of our members, as well as anyone who's interested. One of our most important resources that we have is our mini guide series. The mini guides are an interview-based series that highlights successful examples of collaboration and engagement between different electricity decision makers, and which are usually our member groups. I have a list of all of our past mini guides shown here, and then we have 2 in the works. And I'd like to flag that our mini guide on collaboration between air regulators and PUCs and state energy offices is slated to be published late this February, so just in a couple weeks, so look out for that. And then we also have a mini guide on partnerships between higher education institutions and state agencies for talent recruitment and workforce development that will be published in late March. In addition to our mini guides, we also have a resource catalog for transmission and distribution. It has over 200 resources available on different issues around transmission and distribution coordination. You can go to the next slide, and I'll stop here to pass it to our member organizations to share. I'll just highlight that Miles's contact information and NACA's website are listed on the slide, so please check that out later if you'd like to reach out to him. But with that, let me pass it to our first speaker today, which will actually be Dan Lau with NGA. Thanks, Dan.
Great, fantastic. Thank you, Sarah, and thank you to NCEP and to NARUC for having us on this webinar. It's always a valuable opportunity to get together with our state association and state colleagues to walk through all of our work for the upcoming year, but also to hear about what all the others are doing. I feel like there's often good areas of alignment that we identify here that we're able to proceed with. So with that, if we can go to the next slide. Just to quickly introduce myself, for those of you who I don't know, I'm Dan Loff. I'm the Energy Program Director here at the National Governors Association in our Center for Best Practices. To the next slide. For those of you who are new to these calls, the NGA Center for Best Practices is our state policy shop here at NGA. So it's really a research and convening organization that we have here at NGA, where we work to support governors across a wide range of topics. So again, my area is energy, but we have colleagues working on everything from cybersecurity to environment, healthcare, legal issues facing governors, public health, education, really the full gamut of policy topics that a state may have to deal with, or that the governor will be working on. And I say that because while my area is energy and my team works on energy policy, often those other areas intersect very closely with the work that we collectively do in energy. And so we have a great opportunity through NGA to bring our workforce development team or infrastructure team or others together with the governor's energy policy advisors to really explore those areas of intersection throughout the organization. Just advancing to the next slide, just to illustrate that all of these bolded program areas are areas where we have active overlapping work to bring you all on the line from the energy side together with other aspects and other groups within state government. So to go over to the next slide, or to pause here. Sorry, backtrack real quick. Thank you. So my team, we lead the Governor's Energy Policy Learning Network. Those are the Governor's Energy Policy Advisors. About 75% of them sit directly in the governor's office. A quarter of them are dual-hatted as state energy officials. So we do have some overlap with NASIO and a lot of good alignment that comes out of that. For those who haven't participated in that work before, please let me know if you think you should be. But we have monthly calls with energy advisors to facilitate conversation, along with regular peer-to-peer exchange and workshops. Every week we email an in-depth update on all of the federal programs that are transpiring. So funding opportunities, requests for information, things along those lines. We're also available for on-demand technical assistance as those tricky questions and challenges come up, especially as many states are in the midst of their legislative sessions. So now we can jump 2 slides ahead, and I'll start off by going through just a couple of recent resources that we released that may be of interest to you all, and then talk about our upcoming work for the year. This first one that I wanted to highlight, this is something that we put out following the announcement of the Department of Energy's Hydrogen Hub grants and awards that are going to many states across the country. We wanted to outline both what those projects are going to look like, but also some of the funding and financing opportunities available to them. Going to the next slide, we also put out a recent paper on energy cybersecurity resources for governors, policy advisors. This was updating an earlier compilation that we had, looking at everything from federal activities to some of the state resources, not just from NGA, but from many of the other associations on the line here today, really working to take the fantastic body of work that's being developed, across state and federal government, and compiling that into one place at a higher level that could be digestible to governors and their staffs. The next product I wanted to flag briefly. It's one that I've had on here before, and it's our executive authorities for energy emergencies. Going to the next slide. It's one of those perennially important and relevant documents, especially as hurricane season is not too far off, and energy emergencies are always a persistent threat. It's an actionable document that any of you can use to facilitate emergency response and energy restoration. So clicking ahead, I think 2 slides from here, we'll talk about our areas of focus. I'll start off with our upcoming events. I'm going to run through these fairly quickly, and then I'll turn to some of our upcoming publications as well. I know there's a lot here, so if you have any questions, feel free to either ask if there's time or flag it in the chat. I'll also leave you with my contact information at the end in case you need to get in touch with me, and I'd be happy to connect with any of you separately following the call. I'm excited to say that our annual winter meeting with the governors is going to be taking place next week. We'll have, I think, north of 40 governors in DC for a wide range of conversations and meetings with federal partners. Of note to this group, 2 of the conversations we're going to be having with governors are on innovations in emergency response and disaster recovery, and another on infrastructure workforce, including energy workforce needs, and that one featuring the executive director of Edison Electric Institute and Secretary of Commerce. Then looking at the next month, we are going to be working with a handful of states who participated in the Grid X7 energy emergency exercise. We've convened them as a cohort and are going to be meeting in Philadelphia to discuss the challenges they've identified and develop some after action planning and materials for that will bring a state focus to what is otherwise a sector focused exercise. I know many of you all likely participated in that, so if you have any questions or if you're at all interested in observing, please don't hesitate to get in touch. We'll also be working with our colleagues at NARUC and NASIO in April for a state nuclear energy workshop in person in Knoxville, Tennessee. That'll include a tour of the Oak Ridge National Lab. So we're excited about that. It's following some virtual work and virtual sessions that we've held for the states. Statewide energy planning is an increasing focus for the governors and for states broadly, especially as we continue to see technological and market innovations and just the large amount of funding coming from the federal government accelerating transitions at the state level. So we're going to host a virtual seminar series in partnership with NASIO to help states navigate both how to establish and then how to implement those energy plans. We'll be working in May with territories and states with islanded communities to explore areas of intersection in their vulnerabilities and resilience needs, and share best practices amongst that group. Our annual convening for the governors is our Energy Policy Institute, which this year is going to take place in June in Oklahoma City. We're going to be partnering with Governor Stitt to put that on, and we are excited to do that. We're just waiting to confirm final dates, and then we'll get that announcement out. But that's an opportunity to get state energy leaders from across the country together for actionable conversations on a wide range of topics. I'll leave the Legislative Energy Horizons Institute primarily for NCSL to update of it, but it's a project that we partnered with them on over the last several years to bring a cohort of governors' advisors together with state legislators from across the country for really fantastic base level education on energy systems planning and policy. Looking ahead to the end of the year, these are 2 projects that I do really want to flag. The first is an experts roundtable with, frankly, most of the groups on the call today. And that's going to really focus on physical protection of energy systems. So recognizing that we're seeing just an increase in physical attack on, say, substations, threats to pipelines, things along those lines. We're going to be getting together a subset of our memberships along with the sector to explore what those threats look like and what role states can play to work with the sector and protect energy systems. And then following virtual roundtable that we had with NASIO on this past Tuesday, actually, to scope out work on transmission for the coming year. We're going to be convening state leaders this October for a national state workshop on transmission to really dive deeper into the state actions and authorities that can be leveraged to advance those often challenging, costly, and time-consuming projects that are so pivotal to much of the work that you all are doing to modernize and advance energy systems in your state. So we're excited to dive deeper into that and certainly welcome your participation there, should you be interested. So I'll go to the next slide quickly. I'm going to run through this quickly because I know I have a few colleagues coming after me, but we do have a handful of written products coming up that I'm looking forward to sharing with you on the next version of this call. Everything from funding and financing for energy infrastructure projects to resilience in vulnerable communities, looking at cybersecurity, workforce, nuclear energy, grid modernization, and how to align state regulation with policy goals, and then a workbook on, or a playbook on, energy crisis communications. So I know we're a bit compressed on time, so in that last slide, I'll just leave you with my contact information. I certainly welcome questions as time allows. But absent that, please feel free to get in touch with me or any members of my team who you work with, and I'm happy to answer questions about these topics and projects or anything else that we're doing. But with that, Sarah, I appreciate you letting me take the time here, and I look forward to the rest of the presentations.
Great. Thank you so much, Sarah and NCEP, for organizing this webinar. My name is Kirsten Workless. I'm Senior Managing Director for Electricity and Energy Security at the National Association of State Energy Officials, or NASIO. And I'll, just like Dan, will go over a few of our focus areas this year and next, and some upcoming events and publications. If you want to go to the next slide, please. For those of you who don't know NASIO, we represent the 56 states and territory energy offices, the directors and their staff. We serve as resources for them for a lot of different topics, which I'll discuss in a second. But we also advance the interest of our members before Congress and the administration. Next slide, please. So the foci of NASIO, the programs and priorities, really mirror what the state energy offices are working on. I won't touch on all of these. I will focus mainly on the NCEP kind of focus areas, and electricity and energy security, because that's what I work on. But our members in NASIO also work on buildings, equity, state energy planning, innovation, transportation, renewable energy, solar, wind, workforce, resilience, financing, policy, security, and climate. So really an overarching area of programs and priorities. And if you go to the NASIO website, you'll find all of those listed with resources provided by NASIO or other information that you might be interested in. Next slide, please. So focused on a few of the programs and activities that we are currently have ongoing, we continue to support our members on the implementation of the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act, as well as the Inflation Reduction Act. A lot of that is focused on the rebate programs. So if you're interested in those, please find more information on that on the NASIO website. We also support our members on transmission and distribution planning and policy. In the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act, state energy offices are required to get engaged in transmission and distribution planning. So we've been providing ongoing technical assistance to our members, and I'll touch on some of those in a minute. But Dan already mentioned, we also work together with the National Governors Association on transmission. We had a virtual meeting earlier this week, and another event coming up later in the fall. We also work together with ASTRO on the implementation on the NEVI program. So a lot of focus on electric vehicle infrastructure and chargers, as well as kind of related issues such as EV cybersecurity and other items related to the transportation sector. We also support our members on energy security planning. A lot of the state energy offices are in charge of developing and implementing state energy security plans. So NASU has worked together with DOE and our members on supporting these developments and supporting the energy security plans implementation. We also have an equity committee that supports our equity and energy justice work, which is in the electricity area focused on regional roundtables. In April 2022, we, with a lot of other associations on this call, had kind of a national conference on energy justice and equity in electricity, which we're now following up with some regional roundtables. So we had a regional roundtable last year in the Northeast and the Midwest, and we continue to visit all the regions across the country this spring. We also support our members on grid resilience. A lot of state energy offices are lead agencies for the state and territories and tribal formula grant funding, 4101D. So we are in the process, again, together with NERUC, to kick off some grid resilience cohorts where we're bringing together our members to really discuss what kind of opportunities and challenges there are with implementing 4101D, what kind of risk assessment, risk mitigation strategy, risk evaluation frameworks are needed in terms of understanding and implementing grid resilience funding. Together with NERUC, we also have a state microgrid working group, which has a lot of events ongoing, and I'm sure NERUC will cover that, so I'll keep it brief. We also work on solar and offshore wind. On the solar side, we have two projects. One is the Inclusive Shared Solar Initiative, which focuses on solar for all and community solar for low-income communities. And then our cybersecurity advisory team for state solar, CATS, is also together with NERUC and focuses on solar cybersecurity. Together with NERUC, again, we have a DER integration and compensation initiative, which looks at how can aggregated DERs or ADERs be understood and what kind of solutions can state energy offices and PUCs provide to increase DER integration and compensation and the development of aggregated DERs, especially in light of Work Order 2222. And then we also have a clean hydrogen working group. We had a workshop on clean hydrogen in December, where we support states that are part of the hydrogen hub funding, as well as states that also have a broader interest in clean hydrogen. Next slide, please. So in a lot of these topic areas, we've been putting out publications. And so I just wanted to highlight a few that we've put out over the past 6 months or so, and then I'll tell you a little bit about some upcoming ones. So the two publications on clean hydrogen, one is a kind of a framework for state energy offices, or anybody really, who would like to develop a clean hydrogen state roadmap. And then we also have a publication on state strategies to develop and support the emerging clean hydrogen workforce. And we will also have another publication on clean hydrogen forthcoming, which is a stakeholder engagement guide. We also, together with LBNL, put out a publication to highlight some of the state energy office's engagement in electric distribution planning. This has a lot of examples from the state energy offices that have already engaged in distribution planning, as well as some ideas for others that are just getting into this topic. We also provided a lot of information on EV charging. We have, for example, a publication on improving permitting and zoning for EV fast charging stations, as well as a publication on evaluating EV charger reliability and performance. And then as part of our CATS, or Solar Cybersecurity initiative, we had a big launch of a variety of tools. I'm just including a few here, but all of these tools are for state energy offices and PUCs to provide them with information on what kind of cybersecurity issues are associated with PV system, what standards are needed, what kind of engagement they can do with their utility, what is the workforce looking like. So if you go to the NASU website, there's a lot of information on that, and it starts with a user guide for CATS tools where we outline all of the tools that are available. There's a lot that is coming soon. We'll have a transmission stakeholder engagement toolkit and several guides associated with it out this spring and summer. We're working on an energy storage RD&D guide. We have a microgrids and EV charging issue brief forthcoming, as well as some publications on workforce and the role of minority-owned businesses in the U.S. energy sector. Next slide, please. So finally, I just wanted to highlight a few upcoming events. Some of these are for state energy offices only. Some of them are open for the broader audience. So feel free to go to the NASIO website and look at the events, but highlighting especially the distribution planning and resilience training together with NARUC and LBNL. This is part of our grid resilience and distribution planning support. This one will be in March in Nashville, and it's the third iteration of this. We did 2 already, one in December and one in January across the country. And we also have an upcoming webinar next week on the role of net metering in the evolving electricity system, which might be interesting to some of you, all of you. The NASIO regional meetings are also happening April, June this year. And next slide is just my contact information, as well as my colleagues on the electricity side, Catherine Mead and Kelsey Jones. But a lot of the things I discussed here today are also done by other staff at NASIO. So there's a full list on the NASIO website. We are a big team, and it couldn't have happened without any of my colleagues. So big thank you to them, and thank you to Sarah and NCEP for organizing this webinar. I'll pass it over to Sarah or David.
All right. Well, welcome everybody. Thank you so much for joining. Thank you, Sarah and NCEP for putting this forum together. I always love hearing about what the other national associations are doing. If you're not familiar with NASUCA, the National Association of State Utility Consumer Advocates, we are the statutory consumer advocates in the state utility process. So when you think NARUC being the statutory state public utility commissioners, we are the state statutory consumer advocates. We are, I think, the smallest of the N groups, both in terms of staff and probably actual members on the ground in the different states. I think our average office size is about 8 people. So we're a little resource constrained, again, which makes me very much appreciate my other N group associates and the information, publications, webinars, and things that they can have and have the bandwidth to put together. We certainly share all those with our members and give them an opportunity to look and participate. Also want to give a special shout out to NARUC, who is working really hard to make sure that the consumer advocate community and our voice is included in a lot of the DOE work that's happening right now around the country. So shout out to NARUC. So if you want to go ahead, next slide. I'm Dave Springy, by the way. I'm the executive director. I should introduce myself, but yeah, next slide. So just really quickly, this is some background on NASUCA. I'll hit this real fast. You know, we're started in 79. We actually have 61 members operating in 45 states. There are 43 states that actually have statutory advocates and 2 states that have a nonprofit, but not statutory, but does the work. To be a NASUCA member, we have to be independent of state regulatory commissions. We have to have authority to represent customers before state and federal regulators and a right to appeal. We kind of consider ourselves a piece of the due process arm on behalf of consumers. We also have state attorney general's offices that work with us and some other affiliates. Next slide. Just a kind of a pretty picture to give you a visual. There's really 5 states that we don't operate in. The 4 that are obvious, and if you look up there, Rhode Island, that little piece of Rhode Island does not have a statutory advocate. They have actually other people sort of within their process that do speak, I think, on behalf of consumers, but they don't have that independence and ability to appeal commission orders that we find important. So, but I wanted you to actually kind of see what we look like nationally. Next slide. Just a quick look at our webpage. If you want to know a little bit about NASUCA, obviously on our webpage, we have NASUCA members. We have NASUCA policy resolution. So that's how we speak nationally around some of these issues. The third bullet down, I wanted to highlight this, the regulatory basics courses. Obviously, our organizations, I think probably like many of the other national organizations, have experienced a lot of turnover, workforce issues. And so we started putting together sort of a regulatory basics. How does a rate case work? What happens? Now, I know from a lot of you that work at sort of a policy level, you don't get involved in the state level utility rate cases, but all of these policy decisions ultimately cost money, and that money shows up in a utility rate case. And so having some exposure and understanding of how rate cases actually work is pretty important. If you have someone new in your organization that wants to do a little deep dive into this, these are free webinars, and it really is. It's how to put together a revenue requirement. What are the different things? How to put together a return on equity or cost of capital analysis, how to do class cost allocation and rate design. It really is a nuts and bolts. How do these costs that show up on the utilities books ultimately show up in consumer rates? So we're pretty proud of that. It's a work in progress. So we're working on that and making it better every day. But we just wanted to let you know that that is a free resource on something that is kind of fundamental to this whole regulatory and policy process. So have at that. The other thing we have is a lot of webinars. So we don't have the bandwidth or support to do a lot of the studies that you see from the other national groups. So this is again why we appreciate accessing theirs. But what we do is we work with DOE and Lawrence Berkeley National Laboratory, and we do a lot of webinars around some of these. So we pull in the national experts from the national labs that are working on sort of cutting edge research and some of these problems. And we use those as training. So all those webinars are actually posted on our website too. I think there's 26 or 28 DOE LB&L grid training webinars, along with some other webinars and other things. And then obviously, if somebody wants to join the consumer advocates and fly the flag and do the good fight in these rate cases, we have employment opportunities too. So next slide. So again, back to what we do primarily. Last fall, we did a series of webinars. And again, these are all posted on our website. But you can kind of get an idea of what we're looking at and trying to get our members up to date on. And again, some of it is high level policy, but some of it really is much more rate case specific, utility case specific. How do these costs, once they hit the rate case, how do we deal with them? And also around a lot of planning, forecasting, how to get ready for what's coming on some of these policy issues. So we did four-part webinar. Again, each of these are on our website. I won't belabor, but I wanted you to have sort of a look at kind of what we're talking about internally and trying to educate our members on. Next slide. And then also we do LB&L training at our meetings, which I'll hit in a minute, but we had a meeting in Charlotte, North Carolina in November, our annual meeting, and this gives you, again, two pieces of webinars that we work with DOE and LB&L to provide that evaluating demand under increased transportation electrification, which is a big topic right now. We're working closely with EPRI on some of their work too, but that meeting EV load growth at the distribution level is a big topic right now, and all those distribution level costs again show up in rate cases. That paper, Sean Marash came out and gave us a preview. That paper just came out on that, but again, those are what we're looking at next. Next slide. And then finally, just a reminder, we do have 2 association conferences again. Each year we'll be in Madison, Wisconsin in June of this year, and that's a NCEP only conference. So that's us and, whoever, we get some experts and utilities and some different people to show up. But the real reminder is that every November, our annual meeting is co-located with NARUC. So wherever NARUC is in November, we are almost always with them. And so we will be with NARUC, in November in Anaheim. And I only say that is because I think a lot of people don't realize that NCEP is there. We have a really great agenda. We do really good work. Everybody's always very, very complimentary about the quality of our stuff. And it is at NARUC. And we do that so that NARUC commissioners, NARUC staff can attend our meeting for free. We attend, my members go to the NARUC side so that we can cross-populate. We share each other on panels. So it's a great opportunity. Obviously, industry, you have to pay. But just know that we're there in November. So look for us. We have a great agenda and come with us. Next slide. Oh, that's just my contact. I will add, we've got a couple of things in the hopper that I wasn't really quite ready to put on a slide, but we are working with DOE on, I think, another project for this spring. And again, we're working with NARUC to create a more close relationship going forward on some of the DOE projects. So we have other things in the hopper too, but they weren't quite ready for prime time, so I didn't want to put them on a slide. But again, I just wanted to say thank you again to NCEP, NARUC, and all the other N groups, all that great work that you guys are doing and the publications that you're putting out. Those all go out to my membership. Whenever you drop them, they drop out to my membership every Friday. So thank you so much for letting us access those. And please feel free to contact me if you have any questions.
Thank you, David and colleagues. It's always great to have a chance to do this run through together and be able to share with our many members and stakeholders out there what we're all up to. So I'm Danielle Sass-Burnett. I'm Senior Director for NARUC Center for Partnerships and Innovation. NARUC, as you probably know, next slide, is the Association of Regulatory Utility Commissioners. We support the commissioners and commission staff across the country in all 50 states, DC, and the territories who oversee the utilities and regulate those utilities to make sure that they are acting in the public interest. Next slide. The Center for Partnerships and Innovation is the technical assistance team for the commissioners and staff. And we really focus on identifying and connecting our members with identifying emerging challenges and connecting our members with different strategies and expertise and experts to help them understand the nuances of the space, particularly around new technologies and innovation. And our work is funded largely by the Department of Energy, so thank you to DOE for all of your support and partnership. You can find a 2-page fact sheet with some snapshots and our staff team list and all the topics we work on our website, which was recently refreshed. Next slide. Our scope of work in the Center for Partnerships and Innovation is quite broad, as with our members and my colleagues, from generation to transmission, distribution, customers, and we also have a subset of our team focused on cybersecurity, critical infrastructure, and resilience. So you'll have these for reference. I'm going to highlight some of our recent resources and forthcoming items, just like my colleagues here. Next slide. Some of the pieces that we wanted to highlight for you all today, moving from, excuse me, left to right. Just this fall, we concluded a 1.5-year-long effort working collaboratively with key stakeholders on grid data sharing and released a grid data sharing framework and playbook and some companion resources, including a list of all of the utilities and commissions who have acted to share grid data. Grid data in this reference is hosting capacity style information about what is happening in front of a customer's meter that a utility might hold. We worked with utilities, cybersecurity experts, DOE, DER, providers and advocates, and commissions to develop this framework, which includes 7 categories and series of questions that might be asked to gather information about the trade-offs that would be inherent in grid data sharing in any particular state, given their state jurisdiction policy, et cetera. So that is a new resource that might be valuable. We are next going to be working with our members on some pilots. And so we will be providing direct support to a handful of commissions to help them leverage the new resources and also essentially beta test them. So if you're interested in that, please feel free to reach out, and we'll be announcing an open application opportunity at the end of this month. In the fall, we also produced a new paper around resource adequacy, focused on current practices and emerging reforms. It is lengthy but very readable and describes what's happening across the various RTOs and the ways that states are engaging with resource adequacy decision-making and different strategies that you might be hearing about in the electricity space and where those are being employed or emerging. And further in the fall, we released a federal funding guidebook that is focused specifically on bill and IRA funding that's available for resilience. And it speaks to the commission perspective, but of course it mentions any number of programs that for which energy offices are eligible entities or other state entities, utilities are eligible, providing a sense of where there might be resilience funding across a wide range of federal opportunities. We also produced in the resilience space additional chapters of our energy resilience reference guide, including around climate resilience, and this augments a definitions of resilience chapter that we released earlier. You can find all of that on our website. A mini guide, a short discussion piece around fusion centers, which is for information sharing about threats, and a close examination of where advanced nuclear is showing up in integrated resource planning across the country. As you may have caught, NARIC and NASIO work closely together around advanced nuclear state strategies and collaborations. And so this is a publication that looks specifically at the IRPs that have been submitted by utilities recently. Like NASIO, we've also been doing quite a bit of work around electric vehicles. We have a getting started guide that we released in the summer, and we will next week be releasing a NEVI program brief specifically for utility commissions, recognizing that energy offices and state DOTs are in the lead on NEVI, but commission decisions will have a big impact in how all of that rolls out and what kind of uptake we end up seeing from the programs. We also do work, as I said, around coal and carbon management. We produced a publication about carbon pipelines. If there is additional carbon capture and sequestration, how it would be transported and what the current state regulatory environment looks like. And we work collaboratively with NASIO on our microgrids programs. And so you can find a variety of microgrids publications that have been released in the last year or so. In the near term, you will also see publication from us on interregional transmission barriers and opportunities that examines strategies that states either individually or collectively could take, and particularly, of course, working with their RTOs, but not exclusively, to open up more interregional transmission in particular. And we'll be releasing a primer on certified natural gas, which has recently been coming up as a topic in the news. Next slide. We also offer many webinars, as is the common mode of operating these days. And one of those series is called our monthly innovation webinars. You can see the link here on the slide on the left, a different topic every month, something related to electricity innovation and what's happening in our industry, with a bent towards utility commissions, of course, but those are open to the public, and we invite you to register and join us. We also administer many different working groups and partnerships, and so those initiatives often end up having different webinars too. So you can find recordings of all of these from the fall, actually late fall and winter, on our website. I particularly want to highlight that there was a 3-part series on aggregated distributed energy resources, ADERs, in partnership with NASIO, on grid services, valuation, and compensation. And additional activities are going to be forthcoming around that initiative. And then we did a virtual training series on bulk power system issues, which is part of an ongoing initiative. Those virtual trainings, are all available for free on our website. There were 2 on resource adequacy that complemented our publication, and 1 on generator interconnection. And then, as noted, we operate a number of other partnerships, so you can get all of these on our website. Next slide. Forthcoming items, here's a list of some events that we thought would be of interest to this audience. There will be our March Innovation webinar will be on different ways of thinking about electricity consumer choice. You can register at our previous URL. The distribution systems and planning and resilience training that Kirsten already mentioned, and we do also offer cybersecurity training specifically for utility commissioners and commission staff. But if you are a state employee and you're interested, please reach out. We might be able to hold a slot for you. And we also work with NASIO and NASUCA, and historically with NGA, on regional energy equity workshops. We're planning one for early May right now in DC for the Mid-Atlantic region, and we'll continue making our way across the country with a June and a fall event to the Southeast and the Central region. And we facilitate a variety of site visits that are specific for NARUC members. So if you're a NARUC member and you want to learn more, you can contact my colleague Kira, or you can go through me and I'll get you connected to the right person. Next slide. I believe all I have left is NARUC's Winter Policy Summit is the week after next. So right after NGA. I wanted to mention that there is a free add-on event. If you're not yet registered for the NARUC meeting, today's the last day to do online registration, but it's not the last day to register for the virtual power plants workshop, which will be a half-day workshop after the end of the NARUC Winter Policy Summit. And that is free and will be highly interactive and an excellent event. You can register for that. You'll be getting copies of the slides. And if you are a NARUC member, please consider joining one of our state working groups. We run about half of these in partnership with NASIO. We also have mailing lists so you can keep up to date on new announcements and resources. And finally, I believe the final slide is a staff directory for the Center for Partnerships and Innovation. Please don't hesitate to contact any of us, or again, you can certainly work through me and I'll get you to the right person. Thank you. I think Feline will take over from here.
Hi, thank you for having us. My name is Feline Taramina. I'm the Associate Director of the Energy Policy Team at the National Conference of State Legislatures. For those who don't know, the National Conference of State Legislatures, we call NCSL, was created by state legislators and legislative staff in 1975. Every state legislator and every legislative staffer in the country is a member of the organization. We promote nonpartisan policy innovation. We create opportunities for lawmakers to share knowledge, and we ensure that state legislatures have a strong, cohesive voice in the federal system. Again, we're nonpartisan. We do not support or endorse legislation or specific policies, and we do not do model legislation. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. You can skip ahead. Thank you. Go back one, please. Sorry. Thank you. These are some recent, oh, sorry. Next one forward. These are some upcoming events that NCSO either had recently or is about to have. We had a nuclear legislative working group meeting in December in Charlotte, North Carolina. We will be having the Legislative Energy Horizon Institute, which has 2 sessions. This is an accredited course for lawmakers that covers a wide range of energy policy. We also have an energy staff network, which is new, and they meet 4 times a year, 3 times virtually and once in person. They're going to be meeting at the Legislative Summit in August. That is our premier event. It's not up here. I probably should have put a slide in, but the Legislative Summit, annual summit, is 6,000 legislative staff and legislators from across the country. And this year it's going to be in Louisville, Kentucky, August 5th through 7th. We also, the energy team, have a lot of working groups, much like the other groups on the call today. We have an energy supply task force. Our next meeting will be in Quebec City, May 16th and 17th. The task force covers a wide range of energy issues and usually participates in a site visit, a facility visit. This one in Quebec City will be unique in that we will be hearing from quite a few of our Canadian friends on their energy policy and energy sector. We also have, as I mentioned, an energy staff network that brings together energy staff from around, legislative staff from around the country. And we have 2 working groups, the Nuclear Legislative Working Group, which I've just mentioned, which meets twice a year and will likely meet in the spring. We're looking at Chicago as the basis for the next meeting. And we have an energy security working group, which is also pretty new. It meets virtually 3 times a year and once in person. Next slide, please. So much like the other groups, we produce a lot of reports and toolkits in partnership with DOE. Toolkits tend to be point legislators and others in direction to find different resources. The low-income renter energy efficiency toolkit and the state energy security legislative toolkit are new, and you can find these on our website. The electric transmission primer is also new. The team also keeps up to date a series of web resources, which are listed there: renewables, greenhouse gases, energy state bill tracking. I should talk about that. NCSL tracks more than 1,400 issue areas throughout the organization. And for the energy program, we track everything from energy resilience, cybersecurity, renewables, nuclear, grid modernization, emergency response, and transmission, just to name some. We also do webinars and have video resources. The upcoming webinars that we are planning to do are around energy efficiency for low-income and renters, grid resilience to highlight state grid projects, and EV deployment and infrastructure. We also do, upon request, legislative research requests and technical assistance. Our legislative research requests look at other state legislation that's going around the country to compare it and provide legislators and legislative staff with a view of what other state legislatures and lawmakers are doing around the country. Next slide, please. This is just a variety of newsletters that NCSL produces. The energy team produces two, so I'll point those out. The first is News Reactor. It's a quarterly newsletter that covers the latest news and trends around nuclear industry. It traces everything from the fuel cycle all the way from mining and energy production through the handling of spent fuel. Then there's also a monthly newsletter that NCSL Energy Team produces, which is called Plugged In. And this keeps state legislators, legislative staff, and others informed about relevant energy topics and reviews recent state legislative activity and federal actions that impact states and other energy news items. We also will feature upcoming webinars and new reports, not just for NCSL, but for DOE and the other groups on this call, if they want to add them to the Plugged In report, the newsletter that comes out monthly. Next slide. The energy team is producing a series of podcasts this year. The first airs today, I think, I believe, and it's on Transmission 101 for legislators. Podcasts are a great way to reach a wide audience. We have about 2,000 listeners when they are released. Next slide, please. So all this information is on on the NCSL website. If you have any questions or want to follow up, that's my contact information. So please do contact us. And thank you for the opportunity, Sarah, and everyone else.
Thank you, Feline, and thank you to all of our speakers for sharing some of the work that your organization is doing today. We do have a couple minutes for some questions, should anyone in the audience have them. We don't usually have time for questions on these meetings, so that's good news. I saw that somebody put in the Q&A a question for NGA and Dan responded, but I wanted to give him an opportunity to expound a bit. And so the question was, how does NGA think about and determine best practices given the wide-ranging views of governors throughout the country? So Dan, did you want to expound on your answer at all?
Yeah, I can do that briefly. I appreciate the question. So I don't know. It's not that we're really looking for a single best practice for any of these topics, because there isn't really, or I'd say there's rarely one good or one best practice that's going to work universally for every state in the country. And I suspect that holds true not just for NGA's work, but for all of the groups that you've heard from today. So I think consistent with our colleagues on the line, it's really about identifying the range of policy options that a governor can make use of, and then we leave it to them to determine which is going to be the best course of action for their states, given the unique politics, market, structures, energy mix, et cetera, that they are working within.
Great, thanks, Dan. And I think I can speak for at least NARUC and maybe a couple of the other N groups as well. When you say we kind of take a similar approach, there are a lot of different states that are set up very differently and make a variety of choices and are considering different different things when they're making those choices. And so it's good to have kind of a range of options to suit whatever is best for their unique state. I wanted to ask any of our presenters with, the last couple minutes, if there was anything that you wanted to, anything you forgot that you wanted to add from your presentation, or something you wanted to say a little bit more about, or maybe some even further in the distant approach resources that are coming from your organization, just so that people can be on the lookout for them.
Sure, Sarah. I can mention some additional work that NARUC has in the queue, which I didn't bring up today, extending past the February-March timeframe. Some of the things that we're going to be producing in the coming year include, in partnership with NASIO, an advanced nuclear state road mapping resource, where we're going to be providing support to state entities in thinking about how they might develop a framework or a roadmap for their own states if they're interested in advanced nuclear. We're also doing a lot of work around support for natural gas resource planning. And we in fact launched a task force in the fall and are doing a series, educational and expert learning series right now for NARUC members that will be posted online around different questions and topics that are pertinent to natural gas resource planning, given current state and federal policies. And then I can also mention we're going to be doing a lot more work around planning, regional engagement and utility IRPs, integrated resource planning. We're doing a lot around distribution system planning, including how electric vehicles and equity and resilience factor into those kinds of planning processes, and reviving some of the work we've done in the past around comprehensive electricity system planning, trying to bring together DERs and distribution planning with IRP type processes. So a few other things to look for in the future. And I should also mention storage, battery energy storage library and resources that we look forward to releasing later this year. So thanks for the opportunity to add.
Thanks, Danielle. And we're coming up on the hour, so I think I might close us out. Let me take this opportunity to thank all of our speakers once again and our audience for listening and participating in the webinar today. As a reminder, we'll be posting this recording and the slides from today's presentation usually within a week after this webinar. You can find all the links to all the resources that were shared today, as well as contact information of our speakers today on those slides. But with that, thanks everybody once again for participating, and please take care.